Hello and welcome to part 8 of the ongoing AS and A-level Java series, and in this episode we're going to be looking at strings. Alright, so up until this moment you might have realized that strings, or rather we've mentioned that strings, or basically string, is a class in Java. And by this it simply means that a string is not really an atomic type or a primitive type, but it is actually a reference type. And whenever you create a string, basically what you'll be doing behind the scenes is that you'll be creating an object, as it were. Alright, so maybe in order for me to demonstrate this in action, let's actually create a main method, and within this main method we want to declare two strings. So the way we are going to do it is we are going to do it in two ways really, so that I can show you that string is actually an object. So let's create a string called S1, and let's give it a value of Java programming maybe. Then let's have a string called S2, and let's call this one maybe let's just say is fun. Java programming is fun, right? Alright, so having created these two strings, maybe we can actually use them so that we can get rid of those warnings of us not using this particular variables. So let's print sysout S1, then let's also system.out S2, just like that. And of course, if you were to run this code, you would expect to see Java programming is fun right down there in the console. But that's fine. Maybe let me just zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. Right. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to look at how you can concatenate strings. And you might remember from the previous tutorials that concatenation basically is joining strings. So we want to concatenate string 1 and string 2. So we can do it in either one of two ways. The first way would be to create another string called S3, and we then say S1 plus S2, right? Then afterwards we simply system.out.println S3, and this would basically output the two strings, but this time around they are concatenated. But you notice that we are lacking a space in between here, is it? So if you really want to have a space going on between the two strings, you can actually do something like this. Coming back to line 11, I can concatenate an empty string like so, right? If I save and run, you'll realize that we get a space in between. Now it's more readable in this way. Let me just clear out the terminal. CLS. Alright. So this is one way of concatenating strings. So the way we do it is we declared a third string called S3, then we assigned S1 plus an empty string plus S2. Then the second way to go about it is to just actually do it in the println method. So what we can do is we can now come here and say S1 plus space, then plus S2, is it? So this time around what we are doing is we are not really making use of any other variable, but we are just passing these three strings as an argument to the println method. But the way we are doing it is we are making use of the plus operator there. And you remember that in our operators example, we did see that the plus symbol is overloaded, as it were. And by overloading, it means that it has several meanings in different use cases. So that's what we are taking advantage of here on line 13, taking full advantage of the feature of polymorphism in Java. Then maybe the other thing that you might want to check is how you can go about to see if two strings are equal. So in order for you to check for equality of strings, You might expect to use, or rather you might remember me mentioning that in the previous tutorials, that you cannot make use of the double equal sign like what you would do with primitives. Why? Because strings are reference types, or basically they are objects. Whenever you create a string, it's going to be an object, right? So if you wanted to check if s1 is equal to s2, what we can do is we would type s1, then you making use of the dot selector, you realize that we get this method called equals, isn't it? Then we want to compare with maybe s2 to see if they are the same thing. So let me just make sure that I have s2 there. Right, so basically the equals method that we invoked here is going to return a boolean true or false depending on whether our strings are equal. So if I were to save and run this, you would realize that we get false, meaning to say that string 1 is not the same as string 2. Alright, so that's how you check for equality of strings. Then maybe another thing that I should mention, or I should show you with strings, is right, so the other thing that I wanted to show you was an alternate way to create a string. Because remember, I've mentioned several times now that string is actually a class, and whenever you create a string literal, like in this case, you're actually instantiating a string object. So you can actually go about it like so. So you call the string class, then maybe let's call this one s4. Then we make use of the new keyword in Java. Then we create a new string. Then maybe we can actually pass the string right here. Then let's call this one computer science. Alright, then maybe we can just come here and sys out that system.out. Maybe let's come here and check it and output it right at the very end there. So let's output s4. Alright, then save and run that, and you see that we get computer science there. So there's actually two ways you can go about instantiating or creating a string. You can do this way, just by having the type, the identifier, and the actual string literal, or you can go about the way whereby we make use of the constructor that is built within the string class. I know we haven't covered constructors as of yet, but I just thought maybe it's important for you to realize that you can actually go about it this way, so that maybe when we later on start doing constructors, it all comes together and it all starts to make sense. But I think that's just about it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.